Welcome to the Revenue Café. The Revenue Café podcast is brought to you by Breadcrumbs, the revenue acceleration platform. In each episode, we will bring you interesting conversations on all things sales, marketing, and CX related. The hope is we will help you along the path to revenue acceleration and entertain you along the way.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Revenue Café. This week, I'm on my own. Joe Eicher is unable to join, but I am privileged enough to have Brad Cohen, CMO of Aspiritech, join me for an interesting chat, again, on all things go-to-market, sales, marketing, CS, the challenges of being an executive with those responsibilities. Brad, welcome to the Revenue Café, and thanks for joining.
Hi, Gary. Thanks for having me.
Brad, so maybe just to give the listeners some context, you can give us a little bit of an intro into you and into Aspiritech and what you guys are all about.
Sure. I'll start with Aspiritech and then sort of tell you how I got to the place. Aspiritech was founded 13 years ago by Brenda and Moshe Weitzberg, the parents of an adult son on the autism spectrum. And their son, Oran, is a very capable young man, but he was always placed into jobs that really highlighted his weaknesses. Sort of one of the ironies of the disability world and the disability employment movement is that jobs are typically labor-intensive or more simple jobs don't highlight their people on the autism spectrum's strengths, they highlight their weaknesses. So, for example, in Oran's case, very intelligent, very capable young man, very techie. So bagging groceries is just a lousy fit.
Right.
Social interactions, taking direction from a person are really not, definitely not his forte. So they theorized after reading about a company in Denmark that was training autistic adults to test software. They thought they'd give it a go. The reason that it's a perfect fit is autism presents typically with people that have a very high degree of focus, attention to detail, and the ability to do a repetitive task without loss of concentration. Well, that defines QA testing. So the match was perfect. And after a really slow start and painful beginnings, companies started to embrace our mission and give us a try. And one in particular that really launched us was the Bose, the headphone company. And it started with a conversation just like the one we're having. And today it employs about 70 people full-time at Aspiritech. It's about half, 2/3 of our staff working just on Bose headphones. And the fun part is after companies understand what we do, they then understand the value play for them. So usually the foot in the door tends to be what I call the do good introduction. But in the case of Bose, they pay us a lot of money to do what we do, and they find value in that. And for them, it's simple metrics. It's maybe there's less headphone returns. Maybe there's fewer calls to the call center. Maybe when you get a pair of Bose headphones, they connect right away to your iPhone that you didn't update, and you have an old version of Spotify. Those are things that we test for. And so that level of accuracy and quality is really important to them. And so we launched, and that was about 5 or 6 years ago. It's really starting to grow and scale. And now we work for 3 global banks and a couple insurance companies, 4 or 5 large global pharmaceuticals, down to 2-man startups. I joined the firm 3 years ago after being 10 years on the board. I was at Moshe and Brenda's kitchen table when they were thinking about this. As crazy an idea as it seemed at the time, what I really liked about it was it's an employment model. So it's sort of a teach a man to fish model.
Right.
And about a few years ago, what I really tried to do was, as a board member, was change our revenue stream from donations, which were, in the beginning, 2/3 of our revenue. And, I don't like raising money. I'm really lousy at it.
Right.
I was a commodity trader for 30 years. So when Moshe asked me to join the board, it was like, well, you have to sell raffle tickets and come to our gala and all that kind of stuff. And we still do that. But what if we shift to a revenue model that is based on clients? And if we can provide value and quality to clients, eventually something good's going to happen. And that's sort of where we are today.
Right. So just to sum that up for the listeners, really what you guys do is QA testing, primarily software, for private industry. And you just happen to have a unique hiring strategy, which is, folks on the spectrum.
Yeah. So we only hire people on the spectrum. So 90% of our staff, other than senior management, so the support staff, which are autism specialists, and some of the job coaches are on the autism spectrum. Most of them are not. So 90% of our staff is autistic. What's been really fun for me to see over the last 2 or 3 years is we started promoting some of that autistic staff first to QA leads, which is a project manager essentially that has client contact. They're back and forth on Slack and emails with the client all day.
Sure.
And that's gone really well. It's gone well enough that our 2 QA managers, which are people that manage multiple projects, and each of them manage 50, 60 people, something like that, they're on the spectrum. And that's been really neat to see that, typically in disability hiring, they are, lower level tasks. So having, our firm, with more senior managers that are on the spectrum. I hate to use the word disabled because, they're some of the smartest guys some of the smartest people in our firm. Having them in management positions is a really big feather in our cap.
Yeah. One of the terms I've heard used, and I like it. I don't know if it's accepted, but it's differently abled is what I hear being used in a lot of circles now. Because it's not necessarily a disability; it's just a different ability. Is there a feeling on that term in the community?
Yeah, we definitely like that a lot better. And I can just tell you from my experience from coming from a non-tech role. So, I was a trader, so I knew nothing about software development or anything like that. First of all, the raw intelligence, the ability to focus, the ability to see things that others don't and find those real edge cases is really quite extraordinary. And that's why we have grown from, Moshe and Brenda's kitchen table into a 130-person firm, really with a very small client base. So we haven't, our goal isn't to have, hey, we got this project and, it's X number of hours, we'll bang it out and then, see you later. We really try to grow within companies. So we do target larger companies because there's more room to grow. But most of the large companies that we work for, and these are Fortune 100 companies, will have multiple engagements with multiple client groups within them.
Right. And Brad, one of the reasons I was really excited to have a chat with you is because although Aspiritech is like a purpose-driven organization, it has a social aspect to it, social benefit, social cause aspect to it. It's still a business, right? And the goal is to grow a profitable business that can help with that social mandate. So I'd love to dig into that. But before we do, I'd love to understand kind of why you were drawn to the organization in the first place. Do you have a personal connection to the cause? Like what made you want to take on this challenge?
Yeah, I do. Moshe, the founder with along with his wife, was my kid's math tutor in high school. So the guy was at our kitchen table a lot, and Moshe is a magical guy. He's brilliant. He's a PhD in chemistry and pharmaceutical chemistry and something like that. He worked at Abbott for 20 years developing drugs. And he has a magical way about him. He teaches people how to learn, not necessarily how to kind of get through your homework or get through your day. And, he really became part of our family. And a lot of good things happened to my kids because of his help. And so when he asked me to be on his board, because I always knew he had an autistic son, we were family friends. Mm-hmm. I loved the idea because I volunteered for other boards, mostly educational kind of things. But I love this, this whole concept of employment models. And what you mentioned earlier is, we do have a mission and we are a not-for-profit, but it's very quantifiable. It's 7% of our revenue comes from donations. That's it. 93 is from client revenue and checks we get in the mail. That donation piece really goes to the mission part of our work. So it helps with what we call SUO, which is stepping up and out programs. That is, Monday night is coding club, and Tuesday is game night, and Wednesday is movie night, and on the weekends we have a bus, pizza, go to a ball game, go to a park. Last Sunday we had a big barbecue and a picnic in the park. Mm-hmm. Those social programs are key to the employees' satisfaction with their job, because it creates a social environment that is many times lacking in the autistic world. So it's kind of a place to call home. And I think that really translates, and we can certainly quantify it in an incredibly low turnover rate. One of the things that I think our clients really appreciate is many times our QA testers are on projects longer than the people where they're working for, because QA is not a job that people tend to keep for a really long time, and tech people kind of move around a lot. But we're still there, and we know the product. That's where we really thrive, when we become the subject matter expert.
Cool. So, commodities trader background, I think you said 20 years doing that. And now you're, a sales-driven chief marketing officer, right? So you got the messaging, the positioning, the promotion stuff, and you're on the phone with, current customers and potential customers, trying to win them or trying to expand. Tell me about that transition. Like, that must have been a learning curve.
Yeah. I mean, I have sort of two learning curves. One is the technical aspect of it. So I've taken the ISCQB course to learn about QA testing, and I think I understood a little bit. I'm an older guy, so the tech is not quite as natural to me as it is to many of our younger staff members. I knew I just wanted to do this, and I was doing the business development as a board member for so long. And when I really jumped off the board and joined the company, it was really like, okay, uncle, I cannot do this and have a day job. That's my day job. And I was at a point in my career where I was ready to, sort of semi-retire and do something where I get a lot more satisfaction. Commodity trading was great. I was 30 years just down the street here at the Mercantile Exchange, and I loved it. It was fantastic. But I was ready to do something where I could really sink my teeth into sort of solving a problem. And disability employment is a huge problem. And we train people that aren't previously educated in software development or anything like that. We take people that have any background. Our training program is very robust. Pre-COVID, it was a week of classroom style training, and then 2 weeks of job shadowing. And the whole time there's a great support system. So, we're training people to do a job, and as long as they're good at their job, we can bill for that. And that's where, sort of the full circle really makes sense to me. So I really, as you can tell, I really love what I do.
Right.
To answer your question a little more directly about there's multiple paths, there's multiple sort of feet in the door. One is through just a direct relationship with the QA manager. They have a need. Outsourced QA is very common. Either you hire a local firm, a US-based firm, and it's very expensive, or you hire a firm overseas and it's a lot cheaper, and of course the quality is the same. So we fit in between those two buckets. So that's the direct relationship. And then the indirect relationship with a company will be through their corporate social responsibility, through the diversity inclusion programs, and most recently through what's called diverse supplier initiatives. So many big companies are saying, we want to spend X, 2-3% of our spend on diverse suppliers. And those could be women-owned businesses, minority-owned businesses, disabled vets, things like that. And that's fantastic because they're spending their money on things they need to buy anyways. Mm-hmm. We're a little bit of a different twist because those tend to be folks who will clean up an office or make shirts or, make items using disabled people. We're in technology. I mean, the spend on QA is a whole lot bigger than the spend on, mugs
swag
that say a bank's name on.
Yeah.
Swag.
Yeah. That's cool. Just to, dig a little deeper, were there any kind of aspects of your previous, incarnation as a commodities trader that you feel have been, a help to you as you take on this revenue focused marketing role?
Yeah, that's interesting. I do. I think that being a commodity trader, at least the way I always view commodity trading and just trading in general, is there's no particular reason for the price of Apple to be up today and down tomorrow, right?
Sure.
It's all about emotion. It's about sort of looking at the whole spectrum of things. Sometimes there are fundamental reasons for things to be better or worse for, whatever Apple. They don't sell as many phones or they sell more. But generally speaking, there's a lot more emotion involved. So what I try to do on my sales calls is think about what are the pain points for this person. They may be directly tied to QA hiring programs. They may be directly tied to they're not satisfied with their current vendor. They may be directly tied to a budget that they, typically QA is given less of a budget than should be. Mm-hmm. So what are the pain points? And find where we can help them with that. And I also try to think about how do we, as a firm, fulfill the needs that the company has at a higher level that also make that QA manager look good. So it's really important. Moshe is a really terrific guy, and he just always hounds our staff about quality. Because if we provide quality, good things are going to happen, and that is not always the case with an outsourced service like QA.
Right. So you kind of alluded to some interesting ways that you can start conversations with potential customers because of the nature of Aspiritech, right? These inclusion programs, and do you find that people or potential customers will directly or indirectly object because of the social cause that drives Aspiritech's mission?
This never happened to me, but Moshe has told me before that some people don't feel originally that doing this business as a not-for-profit was the right way to organize. So we view our not-for-profit status as a tax status. It's a tax status. It's also the ability for us to not be focused on the bottom line, to be focused about long-term relationships. And ultimately, if we make it's not called a profit in the not-for-profit world, it's called a surplus. If we make a surplus, most of that money goes back to our employees in the form of Christmas bonuses or capital for, new training or new equipment or new furniture or whatever.
Yeah.
So some companies don't understand that as well. But now there's been such a focus on diversity and inclusion internally at companies. All big companies have diversity hiring practices. And originally diversity meant a balance between male and female, sort of leveling that playing field. Then it went to ethnic backgrounds and racial backgrounds, level that playing field, which, please do. It's needed. And then the third iteration of that is probably, as I see it, is disability. How do you find people that have disability and find their abilities? In the case of us, it's the talent to test software. Yeah. And when companies embrace that and they can fulfill their mission of trying to do good, and it's a funny thing. Some of our clients will post and put all over the place that they're using us, and some, like Bose, barely says a peep. They're a private company. They have their own, advertising stream, whatever. Mm-hmm. Great. Some use the not-for-profit and do-good part as something they want to, advertise and promote, and some don't. It's good to us either way.
Right. So, I have a background in technology and SaaS, and, a lot of those companies are focused for a very long time on growth, rapid growth, making that top line look great. And, it's all about using technology to, be able to scale, find repeatable processes. It sounds like, your world is more kind of boutique, right? Like small number of customers, you have a land and expand strategy with them. Obviously, you always want more customers, but it's probably, a low volume, high touch type of model. Are those assumptions correct in terms of how you guys go about trying to grow the business?
Yeah, in fact, I'm really focused on, some of the things that I'm just frustrated at myself over is we work for some giant companies. We work for JP Morgan, and Goldman Sachs and 3 global pharmaceutical companies. And I think about, well, their QA spend is got like 5 more zeros on it.
Right.
How do we become a bigger part of that? And that's very challenging. Where we really find success, and I will use one of the names of the companies I can use, is Astellas. It's a pharmaceutical company that's headquartered overseas, but they have a big presence here in the U.S., in Glenview, Illinois, very close to our office. And there's one person in particular, Stacy Stone, who has been a tremendous advocate for us internally. We've done lunch and learns where it's through their diversity inclusion programs, talk about our hiring practices, because we want to, we're sort of spreading the gospel here. If a company asks us best practices for hiring folks on the spectrum, we tell them everything we know, and we want to support that. And, they can call our staff and say, hey, we're having trouble with this. What do you look for? Things like that. We want to do that. So if we get an advocate internally and they're at a level where they can have, some effect and people will listen, then we're golden. And finding that advocate can be very challenging, because if it's just purely an arm's length relationship where it's, we have a task, do the task, and that's it, then it's really hard to shine on a long-term basis.
Mm-hmm. So how do you overcome that challenge? Is it just like, constantly calling into the organization, trying to deepen those relationships? What are some of the strategies or tactics?
I'm really using LinkedIn a lot, and I have a person who helps me with all the advertising, all the posting, because there's a creative element to them that I'm super not capable of doing. Mm-hmm. Getting in front of people, and what we do is we actually use some strategies to see what's working, and we focus on pharmaceuticals this month, and we're doing that. So we're posting to all kinds of people that have pharmaceutical jobs or jobs at a pharmaceutical. And we're focusing on 2 groups. Some is the people that are directly in QA, so that need our services, and some are in the corporate social responsibility, the diversity inclusion, or the diverse hiring programs. And many of these companies have a lot of people with those names in the title.
Sure.
So at a big company, it could be a couple of hundred people. So we hope we're preaching to the choir. So I really focus on that. But ultimately, COVID's been really hard for me because I want to meet people. Mm-hmm. I want to go to conferences and do panel groups. And, Zoom is great. And, these different web tools are great. But where it's challenging for what I do is I belong to a few clubs here in Chicago, and they'll have a presentation by the CEO of this or the whatever, senior leadership of that. At the end of all these conferences, you can always find a way to get to the front of the line.
Yeah.
And when I introduce myself, I work for a not-for-profit. It's an employment, it's an employment hiring program, and I'm not asking for money. You get a conversation going. And I think that that's one thing we've been asked many times and we've looked into. Should we be a for-profit business? Should we become Adobe, a disability-owned business enterprise, or turn into a B Corp? Because, we could scale, we could get capital, which we don't have. Mm. And I always come back to the simple fact that if when I'm reaching my hand out to shake somebody's hand and I say we're a not-for-profit, it takes it all down a level in terms of comfort. And they're at least going to listen to my 1-minute pitch.
Right. Yeah. So I get just to dig in a little deeper there, right? And there's all these different options in terms of structure. This choice to be a not-for-profit, I get it in terms of removing barriers to conversation. And since it's a lot of virtual handshakes now post-COVID and real handshakes before, getting that barrier down so you can have the conversation is a great advantage. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what's the goal then, right? So for-profit companies is return maximum value to their shareholders, increase that top line and take as much to the bottom line as possible. With Aspiritech, is it, employ 300 people by 2022, employ 1,000 people by 2025? What's the goal?
you just you must have seen our business plan. That's our goal. Now, it took a pause, and COVID was very hard for us. 2020, our revenues were up 18%. So that doesn't sound hard. It was. Many of our clients, we had, 3 clients just poof off the face of the earth because they were in travel-related businesses. So, they weren't developing any more software. And then we had some companies that really dumped a lot on us because we were already an outsourced solution. 2021 will be likely our first down year. Now, that's from a pretty high point, so we're pretty comfortable with it. And it won't be very much. It'll be a few points. The reason is, and I sound like a cliche, it's the chip shortage, because many of our clients are having chip shortages. And if they can't develop new products and send us, a couple of dozen of the new whatever, we can't test it. So that's been challenging, particularly in March and April. We had some, pretty significant hits to revenue. We're frustrated, but we know our client is more frustrated. They're the ones that have bigger budget issues, or have more significant issues. That's going to get resolved. Our goal, we're not for profit. We do need to make a surplus every year, because every year we need more capital requirements. But our goal is one thing. It's quality employment for people on the autism spectrum, and that doesn't have a number attached to us. So our previous growth was 20 to 40% a year. Obviously, that has to level out, because from really low numbers, it's pretty easy to double. Now that we're at a higher level, we'd like to grow 15 to 20% per year and branch out a little bit in the spectrum of people that we can employ. So we've looked into opportunities that would require staff that don't have that level of technical skill that most of our staff currently have. So we're currently doing a project for the TSA. And this is just a simple arm's length transaction. It's not through their diversity program. We tag luggage. There's so much tagging out there to be done. The fortunate part is that we are onshore, and the TSA doesn't send stuff overseas, thank God, because they do it for pennies. We don't. But there's many other use cases for that in many government agencies. So we just started to kind of tickle the whole government contracting portion of that. And there's been some really great contractors out there that have embraced our mission, and we're subs to them. There's so much out there. Sometimes I like make myself crazy. I'm like, God, I haven't really focused on that yet. And oh wait, I have to go over here too. So, I know in what you do, focus is really critical. Sometimes I find myself going off in left field.
Yeah, well, one of the challenges, so like Breadcrumbs is an early stage startup. We've grown immensely in a very short period of time, and our team is bigger, which is great. But I think, like most early stage startups, our biggest challenge is drowning in opportunity, I like to call it. There's so many things that we could be doing, but you can only do so many of them, especially do them well, that you really need to be able to focus and make decisions and prioritize. I think that's a challenge for pretty much anybody in life and in business, but it's an acute problem at an early stage startup for sure. I haven't mastered it, by the way.
I'm a dreamer. I see opportunities, too much. They haunt me. We have, particularly Moshe and the other senior staff have calmed me down sometimes about these other great ideas I have. Some are super boneheaded and some are good ones. We have tried to hone in on what makes a great client, and there have been clients that we end the engagement because it's just not working, because they're just not suited to what we do, or there's too many access issues and we don't have great client contact, where you can kind of get the feeling that they're doing it because someone told them to do it.
Right. Yeah.
We don't want that. We don't need that, because where does that go? It goes nowhere. Yeah. But in terms of where disability employment is going in general and autism employment, one of the things that I just love is when we move to we get a new project with a different part of a big company, and before I bring on the client for a client call with our staff that is autistic, so the leads and the job coaches, that, when they start talking turkey and what we actually, the requirements of the job are, I preface the call and I say, listen, just so you know, this staff member is speaks a little bit slowly. This staff member has, an additional condition of Tourette's. So please don't be offended if he, he scoffs or he makes a noise that is different. Don't interpret that wrong. And so many people on the other side of that call are like, wow, thank you told me, I never knew. And the end of that call is always, wow, you guys really know your stuff. So companies embracing that. And, if I have a conversation with anybody in technology and I say autism and QA, they go, okay, I get it. That is something that didn't happen 10 years ago. And the world, I like to say this, and some people will disagree. The world's nicer now. And more people are understanding and trying to understand the value to not just society, but to the individual and the satisfaction that you get internally for working with people that, they're having a harder time. It's pretty great.
Yeah, no, for sure. Again, it's one of the reasons why I really wanted to have this conversation. I think legitimately purpose-driven organizations are far and few between. And when we had our initial conversation, I felt the genuineness of your passion and really wanted to have this chat. I do agree with you that the world is nicer. I'm looking forward to a day where the world is nicer organically and not necessarily by mandate, right? Like these programs that exist right now are necessary to overcome this like hurdle of change, but hopefully the change becomes intrinsic and not, artificial. I don't know if that's the right term, artificial, but you know what I mean? Like mandated. Because like it's really just making people realize that like everyone has value to bring to the table. It just may not be packaged identically.
Well, I think there's so much more knowledge around it. The terms used when I was a kid for someone that had special needs were really, they were lousy, they were mean and all those things. That was just what we knew. So were we wrong to know them and use them? Yeah, but now we know better. So, okay, fine. Where I think it's interesting, and, there's so many movies, Rain Man comes to mind, like, sure. Rain Man, like, my God, he's brilliant. And we have, a couple of our staff members have that type of memory, where they can memorize hundreds of lines of code and remember it like a year later. And you're like, what? I don't remember where I was that year,
Yeah.
So there is that level of talent. Finding ways to unleash it is really, really, good for the world. And I think that's where sometimes mandating it forces people to open their eyes. And companies will say to us, and we'll say publicly, that although diversity and inclusion initiatives where, intentionally being more diverse, whether it be ethnic or whatever gender or anything like that, the rewards are great. You have to let it settle in a little bit, but the rewards are there.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. Just to kind of bring it back a little bit to, the title of the podcast, Revenue Café. It would be interesting to hear kind of some of your particular kind of acute challenges that you faced as you transitioned into this marketing sales role, and what you've learned along the way. Like, how have you overcome them? What are things that maybe you're still struggling with and are trying to figure out?
Yeah. COVID threw a real wrench in the cog. We were growing at a phenomenal clip for a while. And the balance between my job bringing new clients to the table, some clients that shouldn't have been brought to the table, and the production team, which is, I'm a sales team of one. And, we have a lot of people that are relying on making sure that pipeline is there. I view my job as the simplest job in the world. We need money to make that payroll on Friday. If I can do that, then, I feel like I've done my job. The challenges recently have been finding the right people in a very crowded, Zoom environment. Getting meetings last year was brutally hard because I don't know how anyone else felt about this. I kind of felt like everybody had, their hands over their ears going, I don't want to know anything new. I know it's better, faster, and stronger. I just don't want to do it because, change is so difficult in this goofy environment. As we're coming out, my phone lit up in February, March, April. It really did. And that's really fun to see because, after last year of trying to, banging your head against the wall, of trying to figure out, like, how do I get to people? Why won't these people answer me? Seeing that open up and, I had one of my first in-person meetings, second and third meetings have happened for a while, but first meeting for lunch, how awesome is that?
Yeah.
So the challenge is getting people out of that mindset of COVID, and we don't want to do new things. We just want to kind of stay in focus. That's been tough, and our messaging, the person who helps me with messaging has been great on that. I always wonder, is my foot in the door better service for a better price, or is my foot in the door, let me talk about diversity and inclusion first, and then show you the value prop on the service side? I haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah, and it's probably not a clear-cut answer. It probably depends on what organization, what person in that organization, what do they truly value. But realizing that those are the two kind of key angles, that probably puts you at an advantage already. I definitely agree about the challenges related to COVID. It's always a challenge. People fear change. Change is hard. And then I think, during this COVID situation, I think people's brains kind of went haywire. It was just too much all at once to kind of wrap your head around. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. Definitely in the U.S. So I'm in Canada. Canada's a little bit behind the curve of coming out of this, COVID era. Definitely in the U.S. and in a lot of places, it seems like business as usual. And people are looking for ways to make up for lost time that was, the previous 18 months. And that's one of the things that we're trying to figure out at Breadcrumbs is how do we capitalize on this like pent up demand for products and services in general. And again, don't have the answer to that. We have lots of questions, not necessarily all the answers, but we're definitely working to figure that out.
I think one of the things that has been, I'm not going to say good because the jury's still out on the effects of COVID. And, we all see things and, I don't know about anyone else, but I'm shaking my head going like, seriously, how is this better? This year hasn't been better for anything, What I think it does serve, at least in Aspiritech's, our tailwinds we have a few. Tailwind one is diversity, inclusion, corporate social responsibility are definitely bigger headlines, and that will continue. Companies are now saying we want to spend X on diverse suppliers, or more open to the idea. Second of all, outsourcing has become much more prevalent during COVID because everyone's at home anyways. So even with our clients that require, used to require very specialized security on their projects. So I'm in a building in Chicago. It's a very secure building. There's a doorman and there's key cards and all this stuff. And some of our clients require a key card to actually get in the room where the computer sits to do their work. Fine. Obviously, that all went out the door when we went home. So we've broken a few barriers down there. And then additionally, the barrier of outsourcing, because we all sort of got outsourced when you're at home. Doing things on Zoom and emails and access. So a lot of those barriers have broken down. I'm really pretty pumped about where I think our business is going. Our challenges, I think, for the next few months, the challenge is finding the right clients and bringing them on board. I think our challenges later on are going to be, how do we scale this business? I joke with our staff, like, I don't want to be 130 people. I want to be 1,030 because the need is great. There's lots of people on our hiring lists.
Yeah.
But I think scaling that, developing training programs that are more efficient, and developing the support staff that is, we have a phenomenal support staff that really kind of keeps, the wheels on the bus. But developing that at scale is where I think it's going to be tough for us.
For sure. Well, listen, I think the mission's amazing. I think the goal is awesome. And, from our previous conversation, just want to reiterate, you have a supporter in me and in Breadcrumbs. Any way we can help. On that note, for our listeners, is there any kind of parting thought or call to action you want to leave with them?
Sure. Aspiritech. Think about Aspiritech and other diverse suppliers in where you spend your money. Whether it's the T-shirts you buy, you can buy from Spectrum Designs, this awesome autistic company in New York that makes great shirts and swag and brownies and such, to Aspiritech that can test your software. Why not spend your money wisely with companies that are doing good? Give a try. If it doesn't work, okay, no harm in trying. But if the world thinks about how they spend their money, that is not only just the pure dollars per hour or whatever the metric you're trying to. Sometimes what I'll tell clients is, please give us a pilot project where you can really define and measure the success. Because I really want you to see that this works for you, because this isn't just about we sold this project and it's X dollars and we'll get through it.
Mm.
Figure out a way so that you can see our value. And if we can have someone understand that, that's really helpful. So, to I say to your audience, I appreciate you hearing our story. I really love what I do, and diverse suppliers, all kinds of things you can get with diverse suppliers. Doing good with dollars you spend is really satisfying.
Awesome, Brad. And if anybody wants to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
Brad C, so Brad Cohen, Brad C at Aspiritech, ASPIRITECH.org, or not-for-profit.
Awesome. Brad, thank you so much for your time and for sharing the interesting story that you shared with us. I can't thank you enough and wish you the best of luck. To our listeners, thanks for joining in on another episode of the Revenue Café. Stay tuned. More to come with other interesting marketing, sales, and CS leaders and interesting organizations. I appreciate you listening as always, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks for watching the full episode. Make sure you subscribe. The social media links below. For more detailed info about what we do, take a look at breadcrumbs.io.